Hello and welcome to the Open Air Podcast. My name is to.And. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Simon Bushell. Bush, it's been a while. Sir, how you doing? How's life? What's new?
Yeah, things are all right. Holding up okay. In the middle of a heat wave for the month of October here in Vancouver, which is incredibly scary, given that I walked home from my volunteering shift this morning and it was 24 degrees. It is October the 16th as we record. That is terrifying, Devang.
Wow, I thought you were going to be exaggerating and saying it was a heat wave and say it was 14 degrees, but that is very alarming. Yeah. I'm glad we replayed that climate change episode last week because I feel like we can just keep replaying it till we all burn to a crisp.
I feel like our next episode should be us going to the San Diego Open and throwing a cans of Heinz soup onto the court to
Jeez.
try and encourage some change.
Well, I mean, the Laver Cup protesters, they set a precedent. I guess you could say lighting yourself on fire now is no longer the most shocking thing you can do.
No.
In a public forum.
Throwing cans of soup takes precedent here, doesn't it?
Do you have a take on Soupgate, on destroying priceless art in the name of awareness?
Well, is it destroyed? It's not, right? Like it is
not at all.
Mild damage to the frame.
There's enough layers to this onion that I'm just a shudder at the discourse as usual, rather than the message, which I think is, as always, this is the whole point, right? Activism is supposed to raise awareness.
I saw a statement the other day which was talking to some of the world's leading climate scientists, and they basically said that if nothing is done within inside of the next 2 to 4 years, then humanity as it's currently known will no longer be the same. So I think we can perhaps leave our monocles at the door when someone throws a can of soup.
Stuff your painting in a sack and get on with it.
Exactly.
We got some more pressing things on the go at the moment. Okay. No, but Bush, it has been a while, though, since we've recorded an episode. I feel like the last time we spoke about tennis, it was the sad days of all of our old friends leaving tennis forever and kicking us to the curb as they moved on with their new lives. But the tour, of course, never sleeps. Both tours went on, and we had some fantastic stuff that we missed. So in the effort of trying to cover a lot in a small space, dare I open the floor to you and say, what have we missed? Because I think there was a match of the year in Ostrava with 3 exclamation marks.
I feel like you've botched the name of Ostrava, though, even though you did add the ellipses of the 3 exclamation marks. You don't have to have the upwards inflection in your voice as well, just to match.
Ostrava!
There you go.
Like
Perfect.
that, yes, right.
Has to be yelled, a declarative statement, perhaps. So I think the one that you're alluding to is the one between Barbara Krejcikova and Iga Swiatek, which Krejcikova did her hardest to not see out, to go over the finish line. Took 6 championship points to get there. To be fair, Swiatek saved them all spectacularly. It was a wild finish to this one, fitting into a tournament that was actually very, very fun to watch. Maybe the funnest WTA tournament of the whole year.
Consistently so as well. I think they've fully earned those 3 exclamation points based on the product that this tournament seems to put out every year. Because I think this is not a one-off, Bush. Last year as well, we highlighted Ostrava as being one of the better stops on the WTA. But once again, damn. That was fantastic. Looking elsewhere, I look at Mayar Sharif winning in Parma, beating Zachary, making history there as well. A lot of stuff that I think kind of solidifies what we thought at this point in the season in terms of certain players and where they've come and where they're at. And if we spin off that Krejcikova-Swiatek final to talk about Iga and what Iga has done in this latter half of the season, it's reverted back to the demon slayer of the early parts of 2022. And if anything else, is that just not the most impressive thing that you can see at this point in the game, where it's like, well, you're playing out the string. Of course, the tour finals matter. And of course, you want to win the biggest titles you can. But there's something to be said about being ridiculously consistent throughout the season. And Iga has done that.
Except, of course, she did not win that final. That's the one small caveat. One thing should be said, though. So her 61 match wins and growing as we're recording. The tournament she's in is still ongoing. Is, I believe, the most since 2017, which Caroline Wozniacki hit that mark as well. That's when you're into hallowed territory, when you're getting above 60 wins during the course of the year, especially for the WTA, which has had a down year in terms of the number of matches and number of tournaments that have been played in general. 7 titles, 2 Grand Slams, 4,000 level, 19 bagels, 20 breadsticks, almost $10 million in prize money and a 90% match win rate as well. Those stats going courtesy of Jose Morgado. Devang, it's pretty astonishing, which I guess the question I would ask you is, which of those is the most impressive to you? Because perhaps the most, I guess, untalked about in all of that is her 10 match wins against top 10 opponents as well, where she's not losing to the best of the best. And that, I think, perhaps solidifies just how good of a year it's been.
Well, I think there's so many to choose from, but I'm going to choose one I don't think you listed. But I think it's one that when we compare these great seasons, we look back at some of the marks set by Serena Williams, and I think 9, and that's the number of WTA level finals in a single season Iga has reached this season. And the last person to do that was Serena in 2013. I think she ended up making 13 in total. But this is the kind of season that she's registered, and it is now, it's not a stretch to compare her to these greats, Simon, in the record books beyond just this season. And I know she's going to have to put together a few of these to really belong in the class of your Serenas, your Grafs, etc. But in terms of just single season accomplishments, this has to be right up there at the very top.
It really does. I'm really excited to watch her in the World Tour Finals as well, to see if she can cap this year off and put a lovely coda on the season, which would be her blasting her way through and just annihilating the field, which I think would be, expected at this point, would you say? Just given how she's looked against fellow opponents. And I think we got a bit of a precursor to what the World Tour Finals will look like when she played Jessica Pegula in the San Diego Open just yesterday as we record. And it looked like Pegula had her number through the first set. It looked like she was hanging around. It looked like she had the opportunity to make inroads. And then just Iga came roaring back. This against the backdrop of 2 just blistering performances, one against Coco Gauff where she bageled her, and then one against Qi Zhang as well, where it looked again like she was in a little bit of trouble and then found a way out of it. So she's putting together match wins and she's putting together a record through the season, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't have a different word for it other than it's really, really fun to watch at the moment, because she's both just an amazing tennis player and a really cool person as well. And I think we just are very blessed to have someone like that at the top of our sport.
I think Coco Gauff was saying she thought she had to overplay when she was playing Iga. It's something that's happened repeatedly when she's played her. And when you develop that aura, especially in your peers, your very, very good peers, who are equally ridiculous, that's special. And that's the kind of season she's had. That tournament, Simon, in San Diego might as well have been the WTA Tour Finals.
Yeah.
What a lineup. What a lineup in the quarters. It's a shame the rain delayed things. I think we mentioned that we're recording this during the second semifinal, and Iga versus Vekic or Danielle will be fantastic. I'm sure of that. But I feel like these last few tournaments, Simon, they're doing a great job of just underlining how special those copper players have been, whether it be Ostrava and then San Diego as well.
Yeah, I've never been to San Diego, but I've heard lovely things about it as a city and as a place to spend time. So it does make sense that the world's best players would want to accumulate there to actually end the season, get some nice weather in. Although maybe it's on fire at the moment. I don't know what California's like at the moment. Probably, almost certainly, right?
When in doubt, lean fire. Yeah, unfortunately. If you're a sports fan, the Padres are doing really well, though. So it's a good time to be in San Diego. Also, big shouts to the Transylvania Open, our favorite tour of all time of Open Era. So I think I can safely say for the both of us that this is our favorite tour stop.
The ceremony is just fucking fantastic. There's no other way to describe it other than it's being amazing. Lean into it. Absolutely.
We need to be hospitable to all vampires. And that means including them in the trophy ceremony, including them with a rather bemused Anna Blinkova and Jasmine Paolini, who are like, haha, what the hell's going on here? But still smiling. Incredible stuff. That's WTA. ATP, Bush. A lot has happened. Novak is back winning titles. Just around the world. Israel, Kazakhstan. It doesn't matter. He's back. So maybe that hasn't changed as much, and we can gloss over that as much as we can. But just does not really do that. I'm curious where you stand on the Stefanos Tsitsipas situation as we sit here in October 2022. What a weird year. What an utterly, utterly weird season.
Yeah, I mean, he got the doors blown off him in that final as well. Like it wasn't really close very, very strange year in general for someone that so much was expected of. I think we look at Stefanos Tsitsipas so differently if he manages to see off that final in Paris last year and he has his first Grand Slam behind him, because he kind of looks a bit like an also-ran at this point, just given the year that Carlos Alcaraz has had as well, that he's been overtaken in that regard. He's still a top 5 player. He's still going to be up and around the top of the sport, but you don't really circle his name anymore, do you? You don't really circle his name at the highest elite level and really believe that he's going to be a contender at a Grand Slam. He's very much among that second and third crop that you're writing down names and thinking, yeah, if everything breaks okay, you could see him maybe making a final, but is this dude going to win one? I don't know, man. It's starting to seem like the knives are out for him in a certain regard.
You definitely don't fear him. I don't think if you see his name in the draw, or if he's in your section at a slam, he does not carry the same fear factor as it should have, as it might have, like you said, Simon, if he did close the deal in Paris. But yeah, the alternate history is a fascinating one because the one we currently live in, reality, 24, obviously a lot of time left. And prove us wrong, Steph, but just someone to key in on as we talk about people who I think have had better seasons, even though you could argue that we were just equally as harsh on him as anyone this season, Simon. And it's, of course, Félix Auger-Aliassime, who is now a 2-time ATP Tour winner. This time in Florence, beating JJ Teen Wolf. Indoor hard courts, Simon. That's the key, obviously. Duh.
Well,
idiot.
The question that thank you, by the way. The question that I have for you is, what do you think this arena was used for outside of tennis? Because I was watching this final and thinking, is this a basketball arena? Is this a badminton court that they're playing on? Is this a pickleball arena? Like, what on earth is this? It looked very, very strange to watch a tennis final played in this side of kind of environment. And the sound the ball was making inside was just very, very weird. All that being said, 2-time title winner. So check that one off the list.
Freaky indoor European hard courts. That is what Felix has now found his specialty. Rotterdam, equally freaky, Simon, I would argue, with the lighting and the weird cars. Yeah, I think Felix has found... Like, yeah, we joke and we laugh, but I do find we were in an interesting place with him because I texted you as this was happening. And I'm like, Felix, yes. And your response...
Would you like to read
you
it out?
You don't have to say it verbatim. You don't have to say it verbatim,
please,
but I
please
think...
read it out.
I think it was quite harsh, and I think it sums up where we kind of arrived on Felix. I can't read it verbatim, Simon, like if you're sure.
Okay, I have it open in front of me, so perhaps I can do it in my own voice.
Please.
Quote, first, indeed, followed by, my man is the master of putting it together in meaningless tournaments. So
there's that. I mean, in the sense that this will probably help him get into Turin and get him into the ATP finals, which I think is a good goal to have if you're him. It matters in that sense, that to stay ahead of your hated Taylor Fritzes of the world, Simon, it does matter. But I think you make a fair point here. It's not, I think Rotterdam is a significant tournament, more so than this. But that being said, for the year he's had, and for as negative as we've been about him recently, I think it does matter. Because winning does help. I think as a professional in this trade, this really circus-like trade where you're traveling from town to town, winning, I think, helps your psyche at the very least.
Trophies matter, Devang. Despite how small they are, trophies do matter. And
I needed a little more some grandiosity. Is that a word? Probably not, but I'd like to stick with it.
It wasn't exactly a murderer's row of people that he walked through to get to this tournament. It was Oscar Otto Brandon Nakashima, Lorenzo Musetti, and JJ Wolf. Of course, Lorenzo Musetti being the class of the field there. So let's not worry about that too much. Just an off day for Renzo. He'll be back. But in general, I'm glad, all joking aside, it's been a rough year for him. It's been up and it's been down. And I think expectations are perhaps far too high for him. And I acknowledge that that's somewhat ironic coming from this podcast, who have had nothing but high expectations for Félix Auger-Aliassime. But the fact that he's a 2-time tour level winner now, it does mean something. And I'm actually pretty proud of that.
Well said. That's not a bad group of players, by the way, that he beat. I think Nakashima's had a great year as well. Musetti, your boy, Simon, you left him in the ditch now that he failed you on the biggest stage. Is that how it works now? And at home as well. That's got to hurt. And JJ Wolf, who, as we discovered on the Discord, thanks to some sleuthing from our lovely residents there, is probably a good guy, JJ Wolf, who I think I assumed was an American jock teen. But there's some evidence that he is a cool dude, Simon. So I think this list of players Felix beat, it's a bit better than it initially seems.
I think it is as well. And the only reason that I was pointing out the Lorenzo Musetti factor on this one is simply because Musetti beat the world number one in Carlos Alcaraz in the final of his first tour title. And with respect, Felix beat Stefanos. So
wow,
let's move on. Move on quickly from that.
Some other ATP notes. Dominic Thiem. He didn't win, but he made a semifinal at an ATP 250 event in Spain. Small steps, Simon. Small steps, but it does feel like we can envision some sort of 2023 situation where Dominic Thiem does find himself in the back end of some big tournaments. I think I can envision this now. Or am I reading way too much into a straight set loss to Andre Rublev?
Possibly, yes, possibly. And Dominic Thiem making the rounds for a bunch of reasons this week, not least his quotations about Rafael Nadal, right? In saying, in regards to breaking his body and whether that's inspirational. It's an interesting one that I think we've discussed previously on this podcast about what it takes in order to just have that insane mindset to play tennis and put your body through hell. Not ideal, and certainly interesting in the mind of Dominic Thiem, who's had his own struggles when it comes to protecting his body and also protecting his mind. Let's not forget, it's been a really rough ride for him. It was pleasing to see him back to a certain level. He looked way off the pace against the top level players, though. And I say that with, again, the greatest respect to the players that he beat. These are good positive steps. I thought he looked really, really good against Charles Sousa as well. I thought that was really impressive. And he looked like a player that could be inside of the top 30 or top 50 again. And that's really exciting. But then to play against Andre Rublev, and then you just see he's just not the same dude anymore. And I think that's okay, considering that he had to basically move heaven and earth just to win one Grand Slam and completely change his game to get to the point where he was a hard-court juggernaut when he was at that level. But in general, not looking like he's going to be a top 10er again, Dev, in my estimation anyway.
I think that's fair, and I think it's a great place to pivot to Andy Murray, who was in that same tournament, fell one round ahead or before Dominic Thiem, sorry. But speaking of uncomfortable slogs or watching a familiar story repeat itself, I had the feeling watching that Korda match that we had seen this several times before and very often in the not too distant past. I don't know, Simon. I wonder how you feel at this stage watching Andy play, because I understand stands will stand by him and watch every match he plays, and that's their thing, and I love that. But geez Louise, this is getting tough.
I can't really think of a good equivalent of it, of someone who was the world number one and then just kind of is now hanging around. Maybe you could say the latter stage of Andy Murray's career reflects the latter stages of someone like Leighton Hewitt's career, something like that, where it's
right.
He's just kind of a dude who will get far sometimes in some tournaments, will have a couple of scalps, but in general, he's not really feared in that way. So yeah, maybe. I'm completely ambivalent. I don't think this end of his career completely changes anything about his career in general. The matches, his comebacks and multiple hip surgeries and all those things to get to this stage is incredibly inspirational. But there is a little bit of this where you're like, I don't know, dude. And the fact that you love this is amazing. But it's also, is your body all right? Are you damaging yourself long term? It's kind of interesting we talk about this back to back with Dominic Thiem's quotes as well. But
right.
Assuming that he's fine, absolutely. But if this is doing any damage to him long term, I don't know that I'd be down for it.
Well, this is the thing. We don't know. And I'm gonna just continue to assume that he is keeping a good track of this, obviously. And because at this point he's playing for the love of the game and there is no negative outcome, right? If this is the reason he's playing and he's just playing for the hell of it and because he still loves it, that's fantastic. But I feel like you said, this is tearing at him or causing some negative outcomes, then you have to ask yourself, is it really worth this? But we're not Andy Murray.
Perhaps we are reflecting our own or projecting our own 33 and 34-year-old bodies into the world.
Extremely washed. Yeah. Struggling to walk around on a day-to-day basis. It's true. Okay, before we keep dwelling too much on that, sad state of affairs, we'll take a break and come back. Segment 2, the Pickleball Wars. Catch you up on this craze. I don't know if it's a craze, Bush, but it is a thing that's happening, and we should talk about it coming up next.
Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. We interrupt our regularly scheduled tennis podcast to talk about pickleball. Of course, we have to, just during the course of the week. The unthinkable happened. That's right. Tennis TV. It's in the fucking name, people. It is literally in the name. Tennis Channel. Come on. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. In case you're wondering what has happened, the quarterfinal of the San Diego Open was taking place, and Tennis Channel chose the opportunity to interrupt the programming to show whatever the hell this was, an exhibition of pickleball. And it certainly raised some eyebrows about pickleball's place in the sport in general, of whether or not it coexists with tennis, what on earth Tennis Channel was thinking by doing this. And in general, it is something that cannot be ignored at this point, just given the prevalence of so many courts now across North America. Devang, first question to you. Have you ever played pickleball?
Played it twice. And I'll say this as someone who grew up loving Foursquare. Foursquare was a game widely available at our playground. Just needed a ball, 4 people, quite easy. I like this idea. I love badminton as well growing up. I played it twice though, and I didn't find myself super hooked, Simon. I'd say this. I would never call myself a pickleball diehard or someone who is going to seek out more pickleball matches than tennis matches to play. But it was a vibe. It was definitely a vibe. And I felt like I was drinking the Kool-Aid as I was playing with people across all ages.
So, a friend of the show, Club Leftist Tennis, hates pickleball passionately.
Big time hates.
It is. It's comedic. I think played for comedic effect, but also seriously.
Can I just underline this, because I was in the process of researching for the show. I saw an NBC News article about pickleball, and the Club Leftist tweet was referenced as a disturbing anti-pickleball manifesto in this article. So I just wanted to let them know that they made their mark. I thought that was hilarious. The tweet I linked to, by the way, said, quote, "Reminder, pickleball is an astroturfed venture capital-backed parasite on public space across the country. Inclusive and diverse tennis communities are getting smeared as stuffy and conservative so that their courts can be ripped up and replaced with something more profitable." I found that tweet very salient, Simon, as in the process of researching for this show as well, I came across an article doing that very same thing in Toronto, talking about the same thing, about how these bougie elite country clubs are no longer the only place you have to go to play racket sports, which I thought was an insane argument.
Oh, it's so funny on so many levels. I don't know really how you want to tackle this, other than perhaps kicking off to say that seeing Renee Stubbs' reply to Club Leftist Tennis, which by all accounts is effectively a shit posting account, and I say that with the most love I can possibly can. I love that account. I love the people behind it, but it was funny seeing someone actually giving it the legitimacy of this argument. I love it so much. It's very, very funny. So I guess there's a couple of points here. The first thing that's worth tackling is that it is undeniable that pickleball is creeping into the hardware, the actual physical space of tennis. And I think this is where a lot of the conflict comes from, in the sense that pickleball players are using tennis courts. They are showing up, they're putting like things down on the ground to play the sport. And like whatever, like tons of different sports and tons of different little different sporting arenas and activities and places to play also have multi-sports uses. But I think it's one of those things that it's testament to the fact that it's extremely expensive in cities at this point to build infrastructure when it comes to sporting events. And this is primarily a situation where I think people are just scared of infrastructure being taken over by something else.
And the thing is, once this is taken, they're not going to build more of it. They're not going to build more tennis courts, right? No. So this is the fear that once it's taken, it's never coming back. There is no replacement. And you can get away with smaller courts or gentrified like beer garden pickleball places where it's like a games hall, but you're playing pickleball, which is what the PPPA or whatever that tour, I think it is PPPA, 3 P's and an A, that it now involves Tom Brady and Kim Clijsters and Dirk Nowitzki. That's what it seems like to me, Bush.
I feel like we need to like put a big note at the top of this segment and just say like anyone who's playing sport at this point, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, just please play or do some exercise. Like, this is
once again, pickleball is fun. Like, I get it. I understand why people play it, and it is definitely something that I think it's something that you can pick up and play easily. And I think sport is limited in those avenues, Simon. Like you're saying, like there's not that many places where you can do that easy and understand something that easy. So in that regard, I can defend it, right? Like I don't think we're saying literally death to pickleball, of course, apropos of the title of this episode. But I think we're saying that this idea, or the way it's metamorphosizing into basically VCs and celebrity investors getting in on this and seemingly making this an it property, or like the NFT of the sporting world, but real. It feels extremely grimy.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic grift, right? It's basic just like money people see something growing and stick a bunch of capital behind it, make quick money, and then get out. It's fairly standard. So there's that side of things. But I think there's also just a different side of it, of the question of why do you think this sport is growing in general? And I have my own opinions on it, which effectively you touched upon. The sport's piss easy to play. Like it's very, very easy. Like it's very, like the difficulty involved in it is very, very low. It's the equivalent of playing like a beach sport, right? Like where you're just hitting the ball back and forth and it, that kind of thing. And the flip side of that is tennis is extremely fucking difficult. Like as a sport, if you're just a casual player, it's extremely difficult to do things, to play the sport at any level, I think, to find it enjoyable. And I think that is largely down to the amount of spin that gets put on the ball. Like you're basically putting no spin at all in pickleball. And in tennis, like in order to get the ball to land in, you have to learn the technique and have to learn the things required to actually get the ball to dip into the space as well. And I think that's why it's having the success that it is because it is a sport that's incredibly accessible in that regard, is that you don't have to do a whole lot of movement and you don't really have to be that good at it in order to have a good time. And I think that's different for a lot of sports because we can attest to ourselves, Dev, watching a sport at a high level and then going and playing it is not the same thing at all. And it's one thing to enjoy watching it. The other thing is can you enjoy going to play it? And I find myself sometimes being incredibly frustrated playing tennis because it's just really damn difficult.
100%. I think my biggest issue outside of the 1A which is the taking over of public space and taking over of tennis courts for this pickleball agenda, in the sense that they're being used for pickleball and pickleball only, and these tennis courts are being replaced and never coming back. I think the second issue I have is aesthetically, watching this sport, watching someone else play is terrible. Absolutely terrible. It is bad, bad, bad. And the Tennis Channel playing this during a time when actual tennis is going on is a super bad sign to me, because I think it is also going back into the Mortagalu Yu-Gi-Oh style card game, like the other ideas that we've had, UTS, etc. This is way worse, Simon, to me. This is going in the bad direction of, okay, what if we just change the sport up entirely? And let's see if this is more palatable if we involve celebrities a bunch of times and see how the ratings are. Because I think that's what they seem to be doing in this soft launch involving all these celebs and Dirk Nowitzki, etc.
Scotty Shifley, whoever the hell that is. Plays golf. I have no idea who that is. It's a joke, by the way. One thing I would say on this that I find really interesting is that tennis, I think, has stood the test of time for so long because I think it's a very pleasing aesthetic sport to watch. And as a spectator sport, I think it is a good, entertaining sport. And I think the flip side of that is it's very difficult to play on that level. And I think the reverse is true in pickleball. I think it's boring as shit to watch it. Like, it's watching paint dry. It's not that interesting to watch as a spectator sport or watch on TV, but I think it's very fun to play. And I think that same reversal happens in things like table tennis and badminton as well, and squash. Like, these are sports that I think are easier to play than tennis in general and to get to a standard. But I don't think they're very interesting to watch as well. And I would say that badminton's probably somewhere in the middle, right? Where it is, I think, a bit more exciting, a bit more interesting. But it's, I think, more fun to play than it is to watch. I don't know, Dev, it's kind of fascinating. I think we watched, or I certainly watched some of the highlights of that celebrity, in quotation, doubles match in pickleball, and it did absolutely nothing for me. And I tried to go in with the most open eyes possible, and it was just incredibly dull.
Upsetting. It was upsetting, Simon, to be frank. I would not tune in again. But again, I don't know. I think this magic unicorn of the next big thing or the next sport that will capture the hearts and minds of the nation, this is what everyone's going after. And when I saw Kim Kleister's involved, my heart sank a bit. Because I'm like, But then I read the press release and it was mentioning how easy pickleball is to play and the fact that now she's getting older and staying active, how important it is. Like, I feel like the PR campaign has just been so well crafted. They've hit every angle here. You really have to sound a bit crass sometimes when you take pickleball TM to task.
Did you see what I wrote in the notes? I'm going to read it verbatim just because I think it's funny. I think it's funny, by the way. We're on the open air, right? I'm allowed to at least be self-indulgent for a little bit. My suspicion is that pickleball is growing because it's played primarily by retirees, and retirees in the United States are fucking filthy rich, and Tennis Channel wants some of that action, i.e. they need to sell Cialis commercials to them. Come on. Is that not a perfect indication of what's going on here?
I think we've got it. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, if you leave NFL Network on for a time, for an hour in the daytime, you see some pretty fascinating ads, but they kind of make sense. You're like, okay, yeah, like the NFL, yeah, this makes sense. I could see TC being like, yeah, we need to seek out other revenues or to see a new revenue model pay off here, or not be left behind, perhaps, because I think the pickup rate in terms of kids playing pickleball is also something that I think I've seen trotted out a zillion times in this PR blitz. I think it's growing for a variety of reasons, Simon, but I'm curious what you think is the biggest reason. I think accessibility is a big one. Ease is also big, but I also think this has been a really smart campaign. And I'm not calling it nefarious by any means, but I think the idea of making pickleball not an equivalent to tennis, but something that can stand up beside tennis as like a sister or brother sport. They've done that pretty good. And I don't think it is at all comparable, but they've somehow, I think, found a way to make this seem like they are on the level.
No, I agree. And you have seen some of the celebrities that have come along and that have tried to be involved in it. You've seen the husk that is Tom Brady, or the life form that is currently inhabiting Tom Brady's body, purchasing a pickleball team alongside Kim Kleister's. And I think it is interesting as well, the people they have got involved in the leadership of the pickleball, it does come in some regard from the tennis board as well. Like, they're trying to gain that legitimacy. And I think this is in a way why you have celebrity endorsements and you have that media blitz. It's the same way that you have cryptocurrencies or NFTs try to associate themselves with Premier League football teams or any of that, is because what they're trying to do is buy legitimacy. They're trying to buy the idea that this is something that is legitimate, that can be used. And you see the same thing happen with pickleball as well, of who is involved in the ambassadors. Judy Murray was talking about this, basically saying that, I think she was tweeting out basically saying pickleball's coming for you, tennis. I was going to make a Judy Murray joke here and say that I don't think tall people should be allowed to play pickleball because I think it provides an unfair advantage. You make of that joke what you will. But in general, lots to discuss here, Dev. Noah Rubin retired from tennis and then went to go and play pickleball. It's kind of fascinating.
It is. I think I come back to the biggest thing for me is the use of space in sports, the use of public space, and the framing of how pickleball works and whose space is being taken away, but who plays tennis. I think the idea of this country club elite or this person wearing a sweater vest playing tennis is really far removed from the truth of the actual numbers and the people that you or I see, Simon, when we go out and play. It's literally it's this wide swath of humanity out there playing on your public courts, which there are fleetingly few of. But where there are them, Simon, I think you would agree, it's a pretty colorful group of people. And I think it's a unique space in that sense when you look around your various big cities. And with each seizure from a public tennis court into a pickleball court, I think we lose some of that. I'm not saying pickleball is predominantly white, but
I think it is.
I want to say you want to say it is.
No, I'm happy to say that. I think that's 100% where I was going with it. Yeah, seize the means of production in that regard. I think there's an interesting discussion here as well, because we're looking at this primarily from a North American and specifically a US perspective, to see whether or not this is the case also in Europe, to see whether or not that rise still exists there as well in terms of taking over a public court and those spaces. Perhaps despite the neoliberalism that's happened within Europe as a bloc as well, the United States is still very, very, very individual-centric in that regard and very, very private in terms of some of the money. So any access towards public courts is a premium. It's an absolute gold dust to be able to actually get any of this space that's funded by the public. And I wonder whether or not some of those spaces that actually do have public funding, or you do have states which actually put some love and attention into its public facilities, whether we're seeing the same charge in those spaces as well.
The week Serena announced she was going to retire when she was in Toronto, Simon, I noticed, at least the court that I frequent, was way more packed than usual. And there was people, I think, playing that didn't get the chance to get out that often. But I think because tennis was in the news and it was Serena, they're like, hey, we got our rackets, let's go out and play. And it was your range of older people to really young people, and a mixture of the two. It's a grandpa with his granddaughter playing. And you're like, holy shit, like this is the whole point of this thing. And I think with each court that we lose an opportunity for that, especially based on where they're placed, even today, and where the new courts are being built, Simon, because I think we've also seen the demographic shift of the more expensive neighborhoods or the more upscale neighborhoods now getting the quote unquote perks of public infrastructure developments as well.
It's mental, isn't it? What a world that we live in. I think also we just are framing this behind our own cities. Like you live in Toronto, I live in Vancouver. And I think Vancouver's pretty good in terms of its access to public courts. But you've seen this erosion, obviously, since the rise of neoliberalism and ideology since the 80s, where you're just constantly chopping away at anything that's public service or just discontinuing the idea. And it's this, because you've the same equivalents have happened in the housing market in these cities or within a lot of spaces around North America, is that you're finding it more and more difficult to make the argument that you want to have sports infrastructure or community centers or arts or any of these sort of things, public spaces where people can go just for free or like for a very little charge to go and interact and play with other people. And that stuff is just being taken away from us bit by bit by bit. And I think that sort of underpins some of the worry that people have around pickleball. All being that being said, it's, I think, also a little bit tongue in cheek.
Exactly. Go play it as well.
Go play, absolutely.
I recommend you go try and play if you haven't. It's fun. It is very fun, and it is a nice equivalent if you don't want to get blitzed 6-1, 6-love by your friend who's way better than you. Maybe go play pickleball instead. I recommend that, but.
Well, go and play any sport. That's
exactly
like one thing. Like it's a tennis podcast. If one thing we can leave you with is like, yeah, go and play sport. It's good. It's good fun. It's good for your health. It's good for community. And this is the thing I'd say. Like I learned so much from team sports growing up that shaped my adult life in terms of teamwork, leadership, like learning to win and lose, learning empathy, learning how to be a good person in supporting people that are going through rough times. Sport's fucking fantastic in that regard. Professional sports got a ton of problems, like a ton of problems. But I think recreational level sport and just going and having fun, there's so much positivity there.
We'll leave it there because that's fantastic. And I 100% agree. Play pickleball, check it out. But also, when this debate comes up, don't lose sight of what I think is really at stake. And that's what's being done with public land. And that's being done with our sports areas and our free-to-play spaces that are quickly being eroded and taken away. I think that's the main thing to pay attention to as we go forward from here. Also, one thing to close on this segment, don't fucking interrupt Bianca Andreescu and Madison Keys on playing. Oh my God.
Don't do that. God. That is a bad thing to do. That is deeply problematic for a number of reasons. But yes, don't do that. Tennis Channel, we're coming for you.
When we come back, it's parting shots. Coming up next on Open Era. Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. It's been a long time. Shouldn't have left you without a long stuff too. I was going to do the full Aaliyah song, but it's been a long time since we did Party Shots, Simon. We got a lot in the hopper, but number one on the list, it seems people were banging at the Australian Open based on who has just had children in the last few weeks. But apparently this is not a new thing, and it's a long-standing tradition.
Someone run the data on this just to prove that it's true over the years. I think you're alluding to the fact that Lena Svitolina and German Fils welcomed newborn child to their family, as did the Medvedevs, all coming out in the same week, as did Rafael Nadal. So yeah, something in the water. Maybe it is known as the Happy Slam for a reason. I did steal that from Twitter. Sorry, it's not my own joke.
So good. Congratulations, dads, from the Serbian Open, as highlighted by Josh. One of the funniest social graphics I've seen. Definitely not needed at all. I don't know why that was made, and I have some questions about why it was tweeted, but it's best not to dwell on that. Some fantastic stuff in the Discord, but I love the notes celebrating Daniil Medvedev's introduction to fatherhood. Andrei Rublev literally writing "bue" as he does, which I thought was wonderful. And David De Gea saying, "No more rainbow sticks for you, bro," which was alarming because I don't really know that many people playing rainbow six online these days, Simon. Is that a thing people do in 2022?
According to DDG, they do, apparently.
Jesus. So the reason I say this is not a one-off, though, is apparently if you go back, Andre Agassi, both his kids, 3 kids, I think, sorry, all October.
Should we try and do some analysis of this, of why this would be the case? Is there downtime in the tennis calendar following this? Or is it just people are bored at the end of the first Grand Slam of the year and you got extra time because you're in Australia already?
Exactly. It takes hours and hours to get back to anywhere, right? So you got some time. I think that's probably it.
Should we move on quickly?
Yes.
Okay, so it wouldn't be an episode of Open Air if we didn't talk about court color or the backdrop to these various different tournaments that have happened over the past 2 weeks. Did you see the court color in Gijón? Incredible. A beautiful dusty orange. Absolutely amazing. One of the best I've seen. The same thing is to be said for Ostrava as well. I think a lovely looking court. So I just wanted to bring those up because fair play.
Gijón reminded me of a technicollegiate high school in Scarborough with a huge gym that had courts divided for basketball, but we played indoor soccer there. That's what that color of orange reminded me of. I did like it though. I do like these freaky courts. I think Ostrava for me, just having the audacity to fully play into their beliefs as being the most hyped up, over the top, in your face tournament. I think they still remain my favorite, but Gijón reminding me of getting just destroyed in North Scarborough House League soccer probably took the tops for me as well.
I love the way that you said that. Their beliefs. Beliefs that they're the biggest. Dude, they are the biggest tournament in the world. Let's not have it any other way. Have you seen those exclamation marks?
Why not 4 then, Simon? My question is, why stop at 3? You know, if you're really going to go for it all. 3
is a beautiful even number.
It's fair. And I'm picking at something that's infallible. So what am I even doing here?
If you were starting...
Just to cut you off, Simon, though, and I know we don't like to do this because it dates ourselves rather quickly, but Donna Vekic has beat Danielle Collins to set up the final in San Diego finally. We finally got a final. But Donna Vekic, Simon, welcome back. I mean, we mentioned all those other players in the San Diego Open quarterfinals who made it look like a WTA finals tournament. It's nice to see Donna Vekic back in the picture.
It really is, yeah. Someone who hits the absolute crap out of a tennis ball.
Amazing forehand.
Absolutely incredible. It's still one of those shocking things that the highest she's ever been in the rankings is 19. She's been inside of the world's top 20, but
yeah,
you kind of feel like there should have been just a little bit more, right? Like just given, I think everyone remembers the run that she had the quarterfinals at the US Open in 2019, and the form that she displayed, it looked like she was going to be a Grand Slam champion. But in general, it's never really happened for her. Like, she's never really fully put it together. And that being said, still being inside of the world's top 20 is pretty damn impressive.
Pretty good. And now she's playing Iga, which, I mean, what better way to test yourself and see where you're at in terms of the road back and the road back to potentially being a top 10 player next year, which I think talent-wise she should be.
No, I agree entirely. And yes, let's move on to a question. I was going to just close out on the court color question to you, Dev. If we were starting the Open Era Open, which may come, you never know, what court color would we choose?
Oh, gosh. I would go a step farther than the Laver Cup, I think. I'd make it like matte black. I'd make it really upsettingly dark with white lines. Almost like the Brooklyn Nets color scheme, their jerseys, but on a court.
Interesting. You have the same mood lighting as well? Like you'd bring the lights down in the
I'd
arena?
make it really bright, actually. I'd make it almost like it was a fashion runway show. Like a Paris Fashion Week kind of idea, yeah. Basically what I'm saying is I love Paris-Bercy, the tournament, and I want it to stay intact forever because that's the perfect court design.
Is that the conclusion that we've reached all this time? Is the Open Era Open is just the Paris-Bercy Masters?
Isn't it though? Isn't it an utterly needless Masters 1000 that nobody really wants to go to, but it's there? Isn't that a perfect place for us?
It has to be. I'm going to be close to being in Paris during the course of when that tournament's being played. I've got to go, right?
Yeah, you've got to live tweet for us from Open Era Pod.
When is it? Hang on. I got to find this out. Sorry, let's do it live.
No, we'll do it live. We'll do it. I just had this page up as well, which is upsetting that I took
October the 29th to November the 6th. I'm close enough. I could go, Dev. Let's do it.
I would be disappointed if you didn't go, Simon. So you have to now. You have to for us, for the listeners.
For the fans of Open Era, I will do it. So moving on swiftly. During the course of this week, it was announced that Patrick Mortagalo is beginning working with Holger Rune. Apologies to everyone involved for that. I don't know who has to say sorry on which regard for it. Is there not a more perfect working partnership than these two together?
There's not. Apparently, they've been linked for a while, I guess, because Holger has been in that academy setup. But Pat Moo acknowledging Simona Halep is on the shelf. Basically, he's like, "Well, I got some time, so I'll coach this kid now." Was I think the gist of the announcement video, Simon? I don't know if you read more into that. He's like, "Well, I got nothing else to do, so sure, I'll coach this kid again." It's perfect. Yeah, I mean, Holger Rune has been coddled and brought up to be this star for a long time. And he's now coached by a guy that kind of knows what coaching people is like that is like, I guess. So in that sense, this should be comfortable.
I feel like I need to make a bold prediction. Is that Holger Rune is such a brat and has been brought up with such a bad attitude that it's going to prevent him from ever being a top 5 player. That it's just going to be one of those problems for the rest of his career that mentally he's going to get in the way of himself.
What I need to happen is that we get a decision either way so that people can stop reminding me that Roger Federer had a bad temper when he was a kid. Because I really need to hear that less when this guy is displaying far more than just a bad attitude, I would say, on court, based on some other things.
Yeah, it's not... There's a difference between a bad attitude and being a prick, which I think is...
Being a douchebag, yeah.
We might be going into that territory.
Speaking of, shall we talk about this code violations chart?
Yeah, I was doing the round on the deep sigh, the tennis subreddit. So
your favorite place to lurk, Simon. Admit it.
I love it so much. Anyway, code violations in Grand Slams through the course of this year by gender. Interesting stuff on here, just in the sense of which gender is a social construct, by the way, are getting various different warnings or different code violations, starting with, on the men's side, huge amount of racket abuse in comparison to the women. That's not really particularly surprising.
No, I think racket abuse is it's like quadruple the amount on men versus women, Simon, which is huge. Coaching was the only category that women had more violations than men. I think it's also something that probably is not that surprising based on other things that we've seen over the years. Yeah, I mean, dudes behaving like morons seems to be the prevailing common trend amongst the tourists, Simon, in terms of people behaving badly on court. Far more immediate examples come to my mind involving the ATP as opposed to the WTA.
Absolutely. I think all this graph did was confirm that there's a lot more negative, toxic emotions on the ATP than there are on the WTA. That being said, there's still some shitty behavior which exists in the WTA, but the quantity of racket abuse, audible obscenity, unsportsmanlike conduct is very, very high on the ATP, to the point where it's actually, I think, turning off for a lot of people. I know it certainly makes me not want to watch certain people play or just in general enjoy the sport, because this is the kind of stuff that you see this graph laid out and you see the first comment, like racket abuse and audible obscenity, and you see like Tennis Channel or ESPN circling it and being like,
"Do you see that?
That's what we want. That's what we want. More of that, please, ladies and gentlemen. I know a way to get the kids in. Not ideal, certainly."
See this guy? He wouldn't hold a door for you. Coming up next on Center Court.
Yes, coming up later this evening, an absolute douchebag that you absolutely would not want to cheer for. He is going on Center Court at 8 o'clock. Yeah, fuck these people.
Beautiful.
Anyway, moving on. There's been a parting of the ways between Emma Raducanu and Dmitry Tursunov, I think in a move that surprised literally no one. Perhaps less surprising is, or more surprising in some regard, is who is in line to take over. And that is us, Dev. We have been approached at Open Era because we're the last people to coach Emma Raducanu. Do you have any notes going into this?
Listen, I didn't feel great to learn that we were literally the last names left on the list. Didn't feel super wonderful. But hey, we were on it and we've been given this opportunity and we're going after slam number 2.
What's the best advice that we can give from Open Era? If you ever step behind the baseline, you don't get any water, a la Tony Nadal.
I'd say quit while you're ahead is probably what I'm going to remain repeating to Emma through our coaching partnership. You don't need this. If this is vexing you beyond a certain amount of comfort level, F them and take off. Jokes aside, Simon, this is pretty, it's interesting because I feel like her career is being analyzed probably by people. You have stats teams running departments and the biggest soccer clubs and hockey teams and baseball teams, but there must be an analytics department in Emma Raducanu's camp being like, yep, this all makes sense, or we should do this, right? There's got to be some method to this madness.
We are zigging while everyone else is zagging. That's what we're doing. We're trying to get what do they call it in the analytics world? Marginal gains, marginal advantage. Is that what they call it? You know this, right? You're in that community.
Sounds right. I'm not a nerd, Simon, so I don't know it that well.
There's a whole episode to be done at some point on our opinions on analytics and sport. It really should be done.
Sure, I watch Moneyball once a week, but I don't care for. No, there has to. Basically, what I'm saying is that someone involved at Goldman Sachs or something Wall Street investment bank area has played this out and has been like, okay, we're gonna choose the best coach or find the best coach because we have to keep doing this in stability. Screw that. Because at a certain point, you have to wonder why the original coach, Big Andy, left in the first place. Big Andrew, sorry. Pog's favorite.
It does. So it kind of reminds me of an NFL quarterback, like someone who had a really good rookie season or something, and then the entire coaching gets fired, and then the quarterback has like 9 different offensive coordinators in his first 9 seasons. It's
exactly.
Like, how on earth is this guy supposed to have any level of continuity or be able to understand how to play an offensive system? It's to a certain extent, like obviously someone thinks that this is worth doing, right? And to take different opinions and different voices in the camp. But at some point, some level of stability has got to be useful, surely.
Here's my comp. Emma Raducanu is Kyler Murray. Simon. This is why. Phenomenal player, probably could be the best, but will not be the best through factors outside of on-court things, including, in Kyler's case, having a horrible coach, Cliff Kingsbury, and Emma basically not having a coach for the foreseeable future until the next one.
Yes. Who will be next? I guess that's the one advice that we should leave this segment with. Emma, do not hire Open Era as your coach. That's one thing that you definitely shouldn't do.
Greg, cut that NFL segment as well. We got to stop glorifying that ridiculous league that we love so much. Good Lord.
In short, did you see the Onion article in the headline for Roger Federer's retirement? Just briefly.
It's 10 out of 10. I hadn't seen it until just now when I opened this, and that laugh you heard from me, it was 100% genuine.
Roger Federer hopes career inspired little white boys to see themselves playing tennis. Announcing his retirement after a decorated career as one of his generation's best players, Roger Federer told reporters Thursday he just hopes his career inspired little white boys to see themselves playing tennis. Quote Federer, "Sure, the Grand Slam titles and millions in prize money are great, but the real reward has been giving young white boys from suburban enclaves the opportunity to watch someone who looks like them compete at tennis highest level." Excellent. Very good. Well done, Onion.
They don't miss. They don't miss. Phenomenal stuff.
Should we close parting shots before we get into 2 challenges remaining with just a little bit of back and forth? It was Arsenal versus Leeds this morning. It was a wild football match, Dev. It was all over the shop. I kind of enjoyed it, despite the fact that Leeds lost.
It was great. We had the power outage, the game stopping because it was clear we have become too reliant on technology, possibly. And the hilarious crowd shots of people being so angry as they were waiting, Simon, I thought was fantastic. But yeah, anytime, I mean, it's only been a short time since Leeds has been back up, but that atmosphere at Ellen Road, Simon, it's pretty special. And definitely thought Arsenal were quite lucky to escape with 3 points in the end. Also, we have reached such a farcical level in terms of VAR and what the hell we're doing here that it's just bewildering where we're going to go next.
It really is. It really is. I thought a point would have been fair. I'm looking forward actually to going back to Ellen Road when I'm back in the UK. I think it's going to be really fun to go and soak in a incredibly hostile atmosphere. I mean, talk about toxic sports. This is not ideal to have 40,000 angry white men.
Look at us champion becoming better humans and helping your fellow man as we lustily cheer for Daniel Jones and the New York Football Giants.
Exactly.
All right.
On that note, Dev, there was nothing wrong with Tua Tagovailoa. Get him back in the game.
What concussion? Okay. 2 challenges remaining, Simon. You alluded to it. So you got I think you should go first based on your tease there.
Yeah, 2 weeks Thursday, I'm heading back to the United Kingdom. I'm there for the entirety of the winter, which will be fun. So I got a few trips planned as well, trying to head to Paris, Barcelona, and Lisbon over that period. I'm going to probably spend most of the Christmas period in Barcelona, which will be really nice, try and get away from the truly horrific weather / lack of daylight that exists here in Vancouver. So I'm excited to do that. And also I watched a film at the Vancouver International Film Festival called Broker. It is a South Korean film. I think it's going to get some wide release very soon. And I thought it was absolutely terrific. It's probably the best film I've seen since Parasite. Not just because it's a South Korean film, but in general, it's just very, very good and would recommend it to a lot of people. How about you, Dev?
Fantastic. Very jealous of that Europe trip, Simon. And have fun. Have a blast. For me, I guess I'd say I started a new job, which is obviously very exciting, but also I think over the last 2.5 years, I had so few face-to-face interactions, right, Simon? You know, you're working from home and you're working over Slack, and in my prior job, you didn't really have that many meetings per se, but in this new role, and obviously meeting a lot of new people, I had a ton of face-to-face interactions, and it was, you know what, really nice. I was kind of surprised. I was a bit nervous heading into it because it had been so long and kind of worrying what my social abilities would be at, or were my social cues up to the par that I hoped they would be at. But it was good. It was exhilarating. And it was good to be back, I think, in a challenging environment that kind of got me excited to try something new again. So I think all in all, a positive opening foray into the latest step of this sports media career of mine, Simon.
How did you find yourself through the first week or so in terms of not just social connection, but just being around people? Like, do you feel rusty in that regard? Because I found that when I went to a work event a few weeks ago, I just felt like just a fucking disaster. What? Forgot all of the things that you're supposed to do. Like, even simple things as simple as making eye contact, and trying to speak at a volume that people can understand. Like all the basic small things.
Yeah, don't eat in the corner. Don't eat in the darkened corner by yourself. Right. Things like that. No, It's weird. I think I took the subway on the first day, which I think was helpful, just getting into that flow again. But then I walked home and there was so many people out on the street because the day was really nice as well. I don't know. I feel like we've returned to some sense of normalcy, probably stupidly so, as we see numbers skyrocket and people not wear masks at all. But I do feel like there was a comfort level, Bush, that I feel like was maybe something that was more similar to something post or pre 2020.
Maybe I should start examining this of whether I want to change my own life around a bit as well. You've inspired me, Dev. Hopefully you're inspiring the Open Air audience as well.
How about that? All right. It was great to be back. A reminder, we are on patreon.com/OpenAirPod, where we have, I would say, the greatest tennis Discord in the damn land. If you want to join us on Patreon, get the show ad free, get it early on Sundays, and join that Discord where we're chatting tennis all the time, head on over to patreon.com/OpenEra. We're also on Twitter @OpenEraPod, tweeting throughout the week as the tour hits its final weeks before the tour finals. So follow us on Twitter, plus a rating or review wherever you get this podcast would be absolutely wonderful. And we'd be so grateful for it as we try to get this pod into more people's ears. For producer Greg on the ones and twos, and for Simon, thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you next week.